expression unreadable but intense. "I didn't hear you come in. You were singing." His voice sounded strained. "An old Italian folk song. My mother used to sing it while cooking." I realized with sudden clarity what this moment meant to him. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "Don't apologize." He moved into the kitchen slowly, like approaching something that might disappear if he moved too fast. Sophia sang it too. She learned it trying to connect with my family's heritage. "You sing it like you grew up with it." "My grandmother taught me. She was from Naples originally." He stopped mere inches away, close enough that I could see the conflict in his dark eyes. Desire warred with something else. Fear or restraint or both. His hand rose to cup my cheek, thumb tracing my lower lip with devastating gentleness. "I want to kiss you right now more than I want my next breath." "Then kiss me." "I can't. Not here. Not like this." His forehead dropped to rest against mine. "You're here because of threats and danger I brought into your life. Because my world made you a target. Anything physical between us right now would be tainted by circumstance, by proximity and adrenaline, and the intensity of forced closeness." "That's not true. I chose to stay with you before any of this happened." "But did you choose freely, or did you choose because you'd already fallen too deep to see another option?" He pulled back slightly, his hands framing my face. "I need you to have clear choice, Gabriella. Not choice influenced by fear or gratitude or Stockholm Syndrome disguised as love. When we cross that line, I need to know it's because you want me, not because circumstances pushed you into my arms." The nobility of his restraint frustrated and moved me simultaneously. "You're overthinking this. Maybe. But I've taken so much from you already. Your safety, your normal life, your ability to exist without armed guards and constant vigilance. I won't take your agency too." "D." He kissed my forehead, chaste and gentle. "When this is over, when Victor is no longer a threat, and you can leave if you want to, ask me again. If you still want me then, nothing will stop me from making you mine in every way possible." He stepped back, the distance between us feeling like miles rather than feet. "Dinner smells incredible. I'll set the table." I watched him move through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, gathering plates and silverware, and understood something fundamental about Alexander Pellegrini. For all his power and control, for all the violence and moral compromise that defined his world, he possessed a core of honor that refused to bend, even when it cost him something he desperately wanted. That night, lying alone in his bedroom while he slept in the study, I made a decision. When this was over, when the threats had been neutralized and life returned to whatever passed for normal, I would choose him again. Deliberately, clearly, without any shadow of circumstance to cloud the decision. And then nothing would keep us apart. The next morning, Joseph arrived for a breakfast meeting that Alexander had been deliberately vague about. I joined them at the dining table, no longer content to be excluded from discussions about my own safety. "The situation escalated last night," Joseph said without preamble. "The Albanians grabbed Tommy Benedetti, 16 years old, nephew of Carlo Benedetti from the smaller Brooklyn family. They're demanding territorial concessions for his return." My stomach clenched. Will they actually release him if the demands are met? Probably not. This is Victor's pattern. Make demands, collect concessions, kill the hostage anyway as a demonstration of power. Joseph's expression was grim. Carlo's family isn't equipped to handle this. They're small-time, mostly legitimate businesses with some gray area operations. They don't have resources for war with the Albanians. Alexander's jaw was tight with controlled fury, which is exactly why Victor targeted them. Forces us to either help, demonstrating solidarity but diverting resources, or abandon them, which fractures the alliance and makes everyone question the value of staying united. "What will you do?" I asked. "Help, but carefully. Victor wants us reactive and emotional. I need to be strategic." He turned to Joseph. "Increase surveillance on all known Albanian locations. I want to know where Victor is at all times, who he's meeting with, every move he makes. And intensify the investigation into Paolo. If he's our leak, he might know where they're holding the boy. Already on it. We've been tracking his communications for the past week. He's clean on his main phone, but he has a second device he thinks we don't know about. intercepting that traffic now. After Joseph left, I helped Alexander clear the breakfast dishes. You're going to try to save that boy, if possible. But realistically, Tommy Benedetti is probably already dead. Victor doesn't keep hostages alive longer than necessary. The clinical assessment of a 16-year-old's likely death should have shocked me. Instead, I recognized it for what it was, the painful realism of someone who'd seen too much violence to indulge in false hope. I'm sorry you have to live with this, I said quietly. I'm sorry you have to live with it now too. He pulled me against him, his arms solid and safe around me. But I promise you, Gabriella, this ends soon. Victor, the threats, all of it. I'm going to make certain you can live without fear again. Standing there in his arms while plans for violence and strategy swirled around us, I understood that loving Alexander meant accepting all of him. The protector and the predator, the man who showed me tenderness, and the one who ordered violence without hesitation. And despite everything, despite danger and moral complexity, and the blood that stained his hands, I chose him anyway. Paolo Ricci arrived at the penthouse on a gray Wednesday afternoon, escorted by 2 of Alexander's men, who looked like they'd be happy to break bones if given the signal. The accountant's face was pale, sweat beading at his temples despite the cool temperature. He knew why he'd been summoned. Alexander gestured to the chair across from his desk without warmth. Sit down, Paolo. I stood near the windows, ostensibly reviewing documents on my tablet, but actually observing every nuance of the interaction. This was the confrontation Alexander had been building toward for 2 weeks. Mr. Pellegrini, I can explain, then explain. Alexander's voice was dangerously calm. Explain the second phone we've been monitoring. Explain the payments to shell companies that don't exist. Explain why you've been feeding information to Viktor Krasnicki's organization for the past 3 months. Paolo's face crumbled. They have my daughter. Not physically, but they own her debts. $200,000 she owes to their gambling operations. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd make an example of her. Why didn't you come to me? Because I was ashamed. Because I've worked for your family for 12 years and I let my daughter's problems become everyone's problem. His voice broke. I never gave them anything that would directly hurt you. Just operational details, schedules, minor intelligence. Nothing critical. Alexander leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. You understand the penalty for betrayal? Yes. Paolo's hands shook. I'm ready to accept whatever consequences you deem appropriate. But please, spare my daughter. She's foolish and weak, but she doesn't deserve to die for my mistakes. The silence stretched for long moments. I could see Alexander weighing options, calculating risks and benefits. Finally, he spoke. I'm going to offer you a choice, Paolo. You can leave this room in a body bag, or you can leave it as a double agent working for me. Paolo's head snapped up. What? The $200,000 your daughter owes. I'll pay it. She gets clean, gets help for her addiction, and you continue feeding information to Victor's people. Except now, the information you provide will be carefully curated by me. You'll help us win this war, and in exchange, your daughter lives, and you keep your position. Why would you do this? Because you're more valuable to me alive and cooperative than dead and making a point. And because your betrayal came from desperation rather than greed. Which means you can potentially be trusted if I remove the source of that desperation. Alexander's eyes hardened. But understand this clearly, Paolo. If you betray me again, if you warn Victor about this arrangement, if you do anything except exactly what I tell you, your daughter dies first. Slowly. And then you die. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Mr. Pellegrini. Thank you. I swear on my life, I won't let you down. You already let me down once. Don't make it twice. Alexander gestured to the guards. Take him to Joseph. They'll coordinate the double game. After Paolo was escorted out, I moved to stand beside Alexander's desk. That was merciful. That was strategic. Paolo knows things about Victor's operation now, including details about how they communicate and what they're planning. But more importantly, during his initial recruitment, Victor got drunk and boasted about how he took leadership of his faction. I felt my pulse quicken. What did he say? That his uncle was weak, too willing to negotiate with the Italians. So Victor arranged an accident that looked like a heart attack, but was actually poison. He murdered his own uncle to seize power 3 years ago. Alexander pulled up files on his computer. In Albanian organized crime culture, that's an unforgivable violation of honor code. If proven to the Council of Elders in Tirana, Victor would lose all legitimacy and face traditional punishment. Death sentence carried out by his own people. That's the leverage you need, if I can prove it. Paolo remembers the name of the man who actually administered the poison, a lieutenant who's since been killed in unrelated violence. But he also mentioned that Victor kept documentation, insurance against anyone else trying to remove him, bank transfers, communications, even a recorded confession he used to ensure loyalty from key members. Where would he keep something like that? That's what I need to find out. I'm assigning a team to investigate Victor's known properties and associates. If we can locate those documents, we win this war without firing a shot. Victor goes into exile, or gets executed by his own people, and his organization collapses without leadership. 2 days later, Alexander informed me we'd be traveling to Atlantic City for an emergency summit. The 5 major families need to present a united front. Carlo Benedetti's nephew was found dead yesterday, dumped in the harbor. Everyone's demanding action, but there's no consensus about what that action should be. I'm coming with you. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. It could be dangerous. Victor's people will know about the meeting, which is exactly why you need to bring me. Leaving me here while you negotiate shows weakness, suggests you're more worried about protecting me than about the larger conflict. Taking me demonstrates confidence that your security can handle any threats. A slow smile spread across his face. When did you become a strategist? I've been paying attention for 9 months. Some of it stuck. I crossed my arms. Besides, you said I have good instincts about people. Use them. Let me observe these family leaders and tell you what I notice. He considered for a moment, then nodded. Pack for overnight. We leave tomorrow at noon. Atlantic City in late November was cold and windswept. The boardwalk nearly empty except for dedicated joggers and people who had nowhere better to be. The hotel Alexander chose was classic old money luxury, all marble and gold fixtures and staff who moved with practiced discretion. True to his principles, he booked us rooms on different floors. But when I emerged from my room that evening dressed for the formal dinner in a deep plum dress that hugged my curves, I found him waiting in the hallway. You look stunning, he said, his eyes traveling over me with heat that made my skin flush. You clean up nicely yourself. He wore a charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, his dark hair perfectly styled, a watch that probably cost more than a car visible at his wrist. He offered his arm and I took it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath expensive fabric. The private dining room held a long table set for 12. 5 family heads with their seconds, plus Alexander and me. I recognized most of them from photographs and phone calls. Salvatore Santoro with his calculating eyes. Antonio Greco, whose Brooklyn operations ran like clockwork. Marco De Luca, who controlled most of Queens. And Teresa Vitale, the only woman running a family, whose late husband's operations she'd seized and expanded ruthlessly. Alexander, Teresa said, her sharp gaze fixing on me. You brought your assistant to a strategic discussion? I brought my most trusted advisor, he corrected smoothly. Miss Mitchell has insights that have proven valuable. Salvatore Santoro snorted. Your most trusted advisor is young enough to be your daughter, and pretty enough to distract from business. I felt Alexander tense beside me, but before he could respond, I spoke up. Actually, I'm 28, Mr. Santoro. Old enough to have served as executive assistant to Mr. Pellegrini for nearly a year, coordinating logistics for most of your business dealings with him. Perhaps you'd prefer I leave so you can continue making assumptions about women based on appearance rather than competence. Dead silence filled the room. Then Teresa Vitale laughed, the sound sharp and approving. I like her. She stays. The dinner began with expected posturing. Each family leader wanted different approaches to the Victor problem. Salvatore pushed for immediate military response, a coordinated attack on all known Albanian locations. Antonio preferred economic warfare, cutting off their revenue streams until they had no choice but to withdraw. Marco wanted negotiation, carving up territory to avoid further bloodshed. The discussion grew heated, voices rising as old grudges and competing interests surfaced. Antonio and Marco particularly clashed, their families having disputed borders for years. Your problem, Marco said sharply, is that you've always overextended. You want more territory than you can effectively control. And your problem is cowardice disguised as pragmatism. Antonio shot back. You'd negotiate with anyone rather than stand on principle. I watched the dynamic carefully, noticing how the argument was pulling focus from Victor onto interfamily disputes. This was exactly what the Albanian wanted, division masquerading as debate. Gentlemen, I said quietly, and somehow my voice cut through the noise. Everyone turned to look at me. If I may offer a historical perspective? Alexander nodded permission, though I could see curiosity in his expression. In 1282, the Sicilian Vespers began because French occupation of Sicily had created resentment among local powers. But what triggered the actual rebellion wasn't unified hatred of the French. It was a specific incident involving a French soldier and a Sicilian woman that gave disparate factions a common cause to rally around. The rebellion succeeded not because everyone agreed on everything, but because they agreed on the immediate priority, removing the foreign threat before addressing internal disputes. I had their attention now. Viktor Krasniki is your foreign threat. He doesn't respect your codes, your traditions, or your territories. He killed a 16-year-old boy to make a point. If you can't set aside internal disagreements long enough to remove him, you're essentially handing him victory. He'll pick you off one family at a time while you argue about borders and principles. Marco leaned back in his chair. The girl makes a valid point. The girl has a name, Teresa said dryly. And she's right. We put Victor down first. Then we can go back to our usual bickering about who owns which street corner. The mood shifted after that. Discussion turned constructive, focused on actual strategy rather than positioning. By the time dessert arrived, they'd hammered out a temporary alliance with clear terms: shared intelligence, coordinated security, and unified economic pressure on Albanian operations until Victor could be eliminated or driven out. Alexander's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently in acknowledgement of what I'd accomplished. After the dinner finally ended near midnight, we walked back to the elevators in comfortable silence. At my floor, Alexander followed me out. That was remarkable, he said as we moved down the hallway toward my room. You diffused a situation that was minutes away from complete breakdown. I just pointed out what was obvious. No, you read the room perfectly and found exactly the right angle to redirect their focus. That historical reference wasn't random. You knew it would resonate because these are men who see themselves as inheritors of tradition. He stopped outside my door, his expression intense. You were perfect tonight, Gabriella. Intelligent, poised, commanding respect from people who don't give it easily. I had a good teacher. His hand rose to cut my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. I keep trying to maintain appropriate distance, keep trying to be noble and patient. But watching you tonight, seeing you hold your own against men twice your age with 10 times your experience, all I could think about was how much I want you. My breath caught. Then take me. Are you certain? Really certain? Because once I cross this line, there's no going back for me. I pulled his face down to mine, answering with a kiss that held nothing back. 9 months of tension and denial, and growing love poured into that contact, desperate and claiming and absolutely sure. We broke apart only long enough for me to fumble my keycard into the lock. The door barely closed behind us before Alexander had me pressed against it, his mouth on mine, and his hands tangling in my hair. I love you, he said between kisses. I've loved you for months and tried to deny it because loving you made you vulnerable, but I can't pretend anymore. You're everything I didn't know I needed. I love you too, I gasped as his lips moved to my neck. I think I've loved you since that first month, when you remembered I took my coffee with cream and had it waiting before I even arrived. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his dark eyes blazing with emotion. You brought light back into my life, Gabriella. Before you, I was just existing, going through motions, building an empire that meant nothing because there was no one to share it with. You made me want to actually live again. I kissed him again, pouring every bit of love and certainty into the contact. Whatever came next, whatever dangers still lurked, we'd face them together. No more distance, no more restraint. Just two people choosing each other despite every logical reason not to. And in that hotel room overlooking the Atlantic, with the sound of waves crashing far below. We finally became what we'd been fighting against for months. Not employer and assistant. Not protector and protected. Just two people, irreversibly, completely in love. Returning to New York felt different after Atlantic City. The penthouse that had seemed like protective isolation now felt like home. A space Alexander and I had carved out from the chaos surrounding us. We'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and neither of us wanted to pretend otherwise. The morning after our return, I woke wrapped in Alexander's arms in his bedroom, dawn light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was already awake, watching me with an expression that combined tenderness and possessiveness in equal measure. "Good morning," I murmured, my voice still rough with sleep. "It's a very good morning." He brushed hair from my face, his touch gentle. "Though I should let you sleep. You need rest after the past few days." "I'm fine." Better than fine, actually. But as I sat up, dizziness washed over me in a sudden wave. I gripped the edge of the mattress, waiting for the sensation to pass. Alexander was instantly alert. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just got up too fast." I steadied myself, taking a slow breath. "I'm okay." His eyes narrowed with concern, but he didn't push. We dressed and had breakfast while reviewing the intelligence Joseph had compiled overnight. Paolo's double agent work was already bearing fruit. He'd fed the Albanians false information about a shipment route, and Victor's people had wasted resources surveilling an empty warehouse in Jersey City. "How long can we maintain this before they realize Paolo's been turned?" I asked, reviewing the reports on my tablet. "Maybe 2 weeks if we're careful. Victor's paranoid but not stupid. Eventually he'll notice the intelligence isn't yielding results." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Which means we have a narrow window to locate those documents proving he killed his uncle. My team has been investigating his properties, but so far nothing." Over the next week, I threw myself into work with renewed focus. The alliance formed in Atlantic City was holding, intelligence sharing between families creating a more complete picture of Victor's operations. But I couldn't shake the fatigue that seemed to settle over me like a heavy blanket. I'd wake exhausted despite sleeping 8 hours. Climbing the stairs to the penthouse gym left me breathless in ways that didn't make sense for someone my age and fitness level. I dismissed it as stress. The situation with Victor, the intensity of my relationship with Alexander, the constant low-level anxiety of living under threat. My body was simply responding to circumstances. But on a Tuesday afternoon, I stood too quickly from my desk, and the world tilted sideways. I managed to grab the edge before falling, but the brief loss of consciousness scared me badly enough that I couldn't hide it. Alexander found me minutes later, still gripping the desk, face pale and hands shaking. "That's it." His voice left no room for argument. "We're going to the hospital right now. It's probably nothing. Just stress and not eating enough. Then we'll confirm that with actual medical professionals instead of your unqualified self-diagnosis." He was already texting Joseph, arranging for the car and security detail. "Dr. Castellano is a family friend. He'll see you immediately and keep this completely confidential." An hour later, I sat in an examination room at a private medical facility that didn't look like any hospital I'd ever visited. More like a luxury hotel with medical equipment. Dr. Castellano was in his 60s, professionally warm but clearly accustomed to treating patients who valued discretion above all else. Alexander stayed through the initial examination, his hand gripping mine while the doctor took vitals and asked questions about symptoms. But when Dr. Castellano suggested some additional tests, Alexander's phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at the screen and cursed under his breath. "I need to take this. It's about the Victor situation." "Go," I told him. "I'll be fine here. It's just tests." He hesitated, conflict clear on his face. "Joseph and Vincent are right outside. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you tell them immediately. I promise. Go handle your business. I'll wait for you." The kiss he pressed to my forehead was lingering and worried, but he left to take the call. Dr. Castellano conducted a thorough series of tests while I answered questions about my medical history, diet, and stress levels. Blood work, blood pressure monitoring, a brief neurological examination. "Everything looks normal," he said finally. "Blood pressure is slightly elevated, but nothing alarming. I'd say this is most likely stress-related, possibly combined with not eating regularly and disrupted sleep patterns. But I want these blood tests analyzed fully. Results should be ready tomorrow. So I'm not dying. He smiled. Not today. But you should take better care of yourself, Miss Mitchell. Whatever stress you're under, it's taking a physical toll. I thanked him and collected my things, feeling foolish for worrying Alexander over what amounted to exhaustion. Joseph and Vincent were waiting in the hallway, their presence a reminder that even a simple doctor's visit required armed security in my new reality. Mr. Pellegrini had to handle an urgent situation, Joseph said as we walked to the exit. He'll meet you back at the penthouse. Carlo and Marco are already bringing the car around. The black SUV waited at the curb, windows tinted dark against the late afternoon sun. Vincent opened the rear door, and I slid into the leather seats, grateful to be heading home. Joseph climbed into the passenger seat while Vincent took the wheel, pulling smoothly into Manhattan traffic. We'd traveled maybe 10 blocks when Vincent's voice cut through the quiet. We've got a tail. Black sedan, 3 cars back. Been with us since we left the medical center. My stomach clenched. Joseph was already on his phone, speaking rapidly in Italian. How many? At least 2 visible in the sedan. Probably more in backup vehicles. Vincent's eyes never left the rearview mirror, taking evasive route to confirm. The next few turns proved the tail wasn't coincidental. The black sedan stayed with us through residential streets and sudden direction changes. Joseph ended his call and turned to look at me, his expression serious but calm. Additional security is en route. We're going to lose them before they can set up proper blocking positions. Stay low in your seat and keep your head down. What do they want? You. This is an abduction attempt. He pulled his weapon, checking the chamber with practiced efficiency. But they're not getting you. Vincent accelerated, weaving through traffic with precision that suggested extensive tactical driving training. The sedan behind us matched the maneuvers, closing distance. Then a second vehicle appeared from a side street, trying to cut us off. Brace yourself, Vincent said a second, before he cranked the wheel hard right, jumping the curb to avoid the blocking car. We bounced violently over the sidewalk, narrowly missing a fire hydrant before careening back onto the street. Gunfire erupted behind us. The rear window exploded in a shower of safety glass. I screamed, ducking low as Joseph returned fire through the broken window. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, each shot like a physical blow. How far out is backup? Vincent shouted over the chaos. 2 minutes. We just need to stay mobile. Joseph ejected an empty magazine and slammed in a fresh one with smooth efficiency. The chase continued through increasingly narrow streets. Vincent drove like he was navigating a video game, taking corners at speeds that should have flipped the vehicle. More gunfire. One of our tires exploded, the SUV lurching dangerously before Vincent regained control. Then suddenly 3 more black SUVs appeared, our reinforcements boxing in the Albanian vehicles with overwhelming force. The shooting stopped as quickly as it had started, the attackers apparently recognizing they were now outnumbered and outgunned. Vincent pulled to a stop in an alley, the damaged SUV hissing steam from the engine. My ears rang from the gunfire. My hands shook uncontrollably. Joseph turned in his seat, his expression concerned. Are you hurt? Any injuries? I checked myself, finding bruises from being thrown around but no blood. I'm okay. Just scared. You did great. Stayed calm, followed instructions. He opened his door. Fresh vehicle is here. We need to move quickly in case they regroup. The transfer happened in seconds, Vincent and 2 other guards forming a protective circle, while Joseph hustled me into an identical SUV. This time we had a full convoy, 3 vehicles moving in formation through the city. My phone rang. Alexander's name on the screen. Are you hurt? His voice was rough with barely controlled panic. Tell me you're not hurt. I'm fine. Joseph and Vincent got me out safely. Thank God. He released a shaky breath. I'm 10 minutes from the penthouse. The entire building is locked down. You'll be safe there until I arrive. Alexander, they really tried to take me. This isn't theoretical anymore. I know. And I'm going to end this. Tonight. Victor just made his last mistake. The penthouse was indeed locked down when we arrived. Guards at every entrance, surveillance activated on every camera. I barely made it inside before my legs gave out, adrenaline crash hitting hard. Joseph caught me, guiding me to the sofa. Shock. He he said, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. Perfectly normal reaction. Just breathe slowly and let your body process what happened. I sat there trembling, replaying the attack in my mind. The gunfire, the shattered glass, how close I'd come to being taken, what Victor would have done to me to hurt Alexander. When Alexander finally burst through the door, I'd never seen him look so undone. His hair was disheveled, tie gone, his usually controlled expression raw with emotion. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled me into his arms hard enough that I couldn't breathe. "I almost lost you." His voice broke on the words. "I left you for one meeting and you almost died. But I didn't. Your security did exactly what they were supposed to do." He pulled back just enough to frame my face with shaking hands, his dark eyes searching mine. "This ends now. Tonight. Tomorrow at the latest. I can't live like this, Gabriella. I can't spend every moment terrified that someone will take you from me. Victor dies or I do. But this war ends." "Don't say that. Don't talk about dying. Then understand what I'm telling you. I'm going to do whatever it takes to eliminate this threat. Things that might be brutal. Things you might not be able to forgive." His forehead pressed against mine. "But I will keep you safe. That's the only thing that matters anymore." I pulled him down into a kiss, tasting desperation and love and determination. When we broke apart, I looked directly into his eyes. "I'm not going anywhere. Not because of fear, not because of today's attack. I choose you, Alexander. I choose this life with you, with all its danger and complications and moral gray areas. So do what you need to do. End this war, and then come back to me." Relief washed over his features. He held me for long minutes, neither of us speaking, just taking comfort in proximity and shared heartbeats. Finally, he stood and pulled out his phone. "Joseph, conference room in 20 minutes. I want every family head on video call. It's time to finish this." As he walked away, making calls and issuing orders, I understood we'd reached the point of no return. Alexander was about to do something that would either end the threat forever or escalate into bloodshed that would consume everything. And I'd just given him my blessing to do whatever darkness required. The plan came together with military precision over the next 48 hours. Alexander worked 18-hour days coordinating with the allied families, positioning resources, and laying the groundwork for what he called the final move. I watched him transform from the man who held me with tenderness into something harder, colder, a general preparing for war. Paolo's role proved crucial. Through carefully controlled leaks, he let Victor's people know that Alexander was finally ready to negotiate territorial concessions, that the attempted abduction had demonstrated the cost of continued conflict, and the Italian families were willing to discuss terms. The meeting would take place at a neutral warehouse near the port, overseen by the Greco family who technically owned the property. "He'll come," Alexander said with certainty during the final briefing. "Victor's ego won't let him resist the chance to claim victory in person. He wants to look me in the eye when he takes what he thinks he's won. And if he doesn't come alone, he won't. He'll bring his top lieutenants, probably 10 or 12 men, but we'll have 30 positioned around the perimeter, plus the evidence that destroys his legitimacy. This ends without mass bloodshed if possible, but it ends either way." The night of the meeting, Alexander insisted I remain at a secondary location, not the penthouse, but a fortified office building in Midtown that the Vitale family used for sensitive operations. Joseph commanded my security detail, along with 6 other guards whose competence was evident in every efficient movement. "You'll be able to hear everything," Alexander explained, fitting a small earpiece into my ear. "But if something goes wrong, if you hear gunfire or the signal cuts out, Joseph gets you out immediately. No arguments. I don't like this. I don't like you walking into danger." He cupped my face in his hands, his dark eyes holding mine with devastating intensity. "I've been walking into danger my entire life, but I've never had someone like you waiting for me to come home. That changes everything. I'm not taking unnecessary risks because I have too much to lose now." The kiss he gave me was thorough and claiming, a promise and a goodbye, just in case. When he finally pulled away, I held onto his jacket for one more moment. "Come back to me. Always." Joseph and I settled into the surveillance room, monitors showing multiple camera angles of the warehouse and surrounding area. The space was cavernous and dimly lit, support columns creating shadows that could hide anything. A single table sat in the center, illuminated by overhead lights. 2 chairs on opposite sides like a stage set for confrontation. Alexander arrived first with 4 men I recognized, including Vincent, who'd saved my life during the abduction attempt. They took positions around the perimeter, weapons visible but not actively threatening. Alexander stood near the table, apparently relaxed, but I could read the tension in his shoulders. "Alpha team in position," Joseph said into his radio. "Bravo team, confirm status." Multiple voices responded, call signs and confirmations that meant nothing to me, but clearly satisfied Joseph's requirements. We had overwhelming force hidden in the shadows, insurance against Victor trying something stupid. 20 minutes passed. Then headlights appeared in the distance, vehicles approaching slowly. 3 black SUVs pulled up to the warehouse entrance. Viktor Krasnicki emerged from the center vehicle. I'd seen photographs, but they didn't capture the reality of him. He was shorter than Alexander, stockier, with the kind of thick muscle that came from manual labor rather than gym routines. His face was broad and hard, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He wore an expensive suit that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than refined. 8 men flanked him, all armed, all scanning the warehouse with professional paranoia. Victor's gaze found Alexander, and a cold smile spread across his features. "Pellegrini." His voice came through my earpiece with a thick accent. "You look tired. The pressure of losing getting to you? Let's skip the posturing, Krasnicki. You wanted negotiations. I'm here to negotiate." Alexander's voice was perfectly controlled, giving nothing away. They sat on opposite sides of the table like chess players preparing for an endgame. Victor spread his hands expansively. "My terms are simple. Full control of port operations in Brooklyn and Queens. 20% cut of all shipping revenue from Manhattan. And the girl." My blood turned to ice. Alexander's expression didn't change, but I saw his fingers tighten against the table. "The girl isn't part of any negotiation. She became part when you made her important to you. I want her for insurance. Pretty thing like that. She'll ensure you honor our agreement." Victor's smile widened. "Or maybe I just want her because taking something you love seems appropriate compensation for the trouble you've caused me. You're not getting her. Propose different terms." Victor leaned back, clearly enjoying himself. "No, those are the terms. Accept them, or watch your organization bleed slowly while I pick off everyone you care about." Alexander was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket. Victor's men immediately raised their weapons, but Alexander moved slowly, deliberately, pulling out a slim folder and setting it on the table. "Before we continue negotiations, there's something you should see." Victor eyed the folder suspiciously. "What is this?" "Open it." The Albanian grabbed the folder and flipped it open. Even through the grainy camera feed, I could see his face go pale. He shuffled through the documents, his expression shifting from confusion to rage to something that looked like fear. "Where did you get these?" His voice had lost its confident edge. "Does it matter? What matters is that I have bank transfer records, communications, and testimony from someone who was present when you poisoned your Uncle Anton 3 years ago. The same uncle who led your faction before you murdered him to take power." Victor stood abruptly, his chair scraping across concrete. "This is fabrication. Lies. The Council of Elders in Tirana won't think so. I've already sent copies to 3 respected members of the Albanian governing body. They're very interested in examining evidence that you violated the oldest laws of your people." Alexander remained seated, projecting calm authority. "Killing family for power is the ultimate betrayal in your culture. You know what the traditional punishment is. You're bluffing. I'm offering you a choice. Permanent exile, South America preferably, with enough money to live comfortably. You disappear, your organization collapses, and the territory remains with the families who've controlled it for generations. Or I release this evidence publicly, and your own people hunt you down and execute you according to tradition." The warehouse had gone completely silent. Victor's men exchanged glances, the seed of doubt clearly planted. If their leader had murdered his own uncle, if he'd violated fundamental codes of honor, their loyalty meant nothing. "You expect me to just walk away?" Victor's voice shook with barely controlled fury. To abandon everything I've built because you fabricated some documents? I expect you to be intelligent enough to recognize when you've lost. Your men are already questioning you. I can see it in their faces. How long before one of them decides to be the hero who delivers justice for Anton's murder? How long before the council sends someone to collect the blood debt you owe? Victor's hand moved toward his weapon. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. One of his lieutenants, a younger man with cold eyes, drew his gun and aimed at Alexander. Vincent moved like lightning, firing twice. The Albanian dropped, his weapon clattering to the concrete. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. Then Victor slowly raised his hands away from his own weapon. Smart choice. Alexander said quietly. Any other objections? Victor's remaining men looked at each other, then at their leader, then back to Alexander's overwhelming force emerging from the shadows. The calculation was evident on every face. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and following a leader who'd just been exposed as violating their deepest cultural taboo. What guarantee do I have that you'll let me leave? Victor's voice had lost all its earlier confidence. My word, which, unlike yours, actually means something. You're on a plane to Sao Paulo tomorrow morning. You never return to the United States. You never contact anyone from your former organization. You live out your life in comfortable exile, or you die violently at the hands of your own people. Those are your only options. The silence stretched. Finally, Victor nodded once, defeat written in every line of his body. I accept exile. Joseph, Alexander said into his microphone. Arrange transport and supervision. Mr. Krasniki has a flight to catch. In the surveillance room, I released a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was over. No massive bloodshed, no extended war. Just strategic intelligence and ruthless application of pressure. Alexander had won by understanding his enemy's vulnerabilities better than the enemy understood himself. Well played, Joseph murmured, genuine admiration in his voice. That was surgical. But my relief was short-lived. The main camera feed suddenly flickered and died. Then the audio cut out, leaving only static. My heart lurched. What's happening? I demanded. Joseph was already moving, coordinating with teams through multiple channels. Interference. Someone's jamming communications. Could be intentional or technical malfunction. Get it back. I need to know he's okay. Working on it. The seconds dragged like hours. My imagination filled the silence with terrible possibilities. A hidden sniper. Victor having backup we didn't know about. Some trap Alexander had walked into despite all his planning. I gripped the edge of the console, knuckles white, barely breathing. 3 minutes passed. 4. 5. Joseph's attempts to restore communication yielded only static and fragmented words. I was seconds away from demanding we go to the warehouse, when suddenly the feed restored. Alexander stood exactly where he'd been, apparently unhurt, speaking with Vincent, while Victor was being escorted to a vehicle by armed guards. Relief so intense it made me dizzy, washed through my entire body. He's fine, Joseph said, his own relief evident. Just technical issue. Everyone's secure. 20 minutes later, Alexander walked through the door of our surveillance room. I didn't wait for explanations or debrief. I launched myself at him, arms wrapping around his neck, legs around his waist. He caught me easily, one arm banding across my back while the other cradled my head. I couldn't hear you, I said against his neck. The feed cut out and I thought, I'm here. I'm safe. It's over. He held me so tightly I could barely breathe. But I didn't care. His face buried in my hair, his heart pounding against my chest. Victor's on his way to supervised house arrest until his flight tomorrow. His organization is collapsing without leadership. The council in Tirana has been notified and will ensure he never returns. No more threats? No more threats. He set me down but didn't release me, hands framing my face. You're safe now. We're both safe. We can finally have the life we want without looking over our shoulders. Joseph cleared his throat. I'll give you two some privacy. Excellent work tonight, boss. After he left, Alexander pulled me to the couch, settling me in his lap like he couldn't bear to not be touching me. We sat in silence for long minutes, the adrenaline slowly fading, reality settling in. I heard what he said. I told him quietly, about wanting me as part of the negotiation. That was never going to happen. I would have burned this entire city down before letting him touch you. I know, but hearing him talk about me like property to be traded, it made everything real in a way it hasn't been before. This is your world. People are tools, leverage, vulnerabilities to exploit. You're not a tool. You're my entire world. His arms tightened around me. Everything I did tonight, every risk I calculated, every move I made, it was all to ensure you could live without fear. I don't care about territory or power or respect. I care about coming home to you every night knowing you're safe. I twisted to look at him directly. So what happens now? Now we go home. Tomorrow we start building the life we want instead of the life we've been forced to live. And I never let you out of my sight again. He kissed me then. Thorough and possessive, and full of relief that we'd both survive to see tomorrow. And sitting there in his arms, surrounded by the remnants of violence and strategy that had defined our relationship, I understood that loving Alexander Pellegrini meant accepting all of him, the darkness and the light, the violence and the tenderness, the man who commanded empires and the one who held me like I was his salvation. It wasn't a fairy tale romance. It was real and complicated and built on foundations that would horrify most people, but it was ours, and that made it perfect. 3 months passed in a blur of reconstruction and revelation. Victor Krasniki boarded his flight to Sao Paulo under armed escort, and within days his former organization fragmented into competing factions that the established families absorbed or eliminated with surgical efficiency. The Albanian Council in Tirana formally recognized the territorial agreements Alexander had negotiated, providing written assurance that no retaliation would come from Victor's remaining associates. The war was truly over. My role evolved almost immediately. Alexander called a meeting of the allied families 2 weeks after Victor's exile, and when I entered the conference room, he gestured to the seat beside him, rather than the assistant's chair along the wall. Miss Mitchell has proven herself invaluable during this conflict, he announced to the assembled leaders. Her strategic insights, diplomatic skills, and ability to read situations have contributed directly to our success. I'm elevating her position from executive assistant to strategic consultant, with full participation in planning discussions. Salvatore Santoro, who'd questioned my presence at the Atlantic City dinner, nodded slowly. The girl who quoted Sicilian history at us deserves recognition. I have no objections. Teresa Vitale smiled that sharp smile of hers. About time you made it official, Alexander. She's been doing the work anyway. Just like that, I went from secretary to advisor. The change wasn't just cosmetic. Alexander genuinely sought my perspective on negotiations, asked me to sit in on sensitive calls, valued my observations about people and their motivations. I'd found my place in this world not through romance alone, but through competence earned under fire. The penthouse in Tribeca became our primary residence, though Alexander owned property throughout the city. But one Saturday in late February, he drove me to the Upper West Side and stopped in front of a beautifully renovated brownstone, tucked on a tree-lined street. "What do you think?" he asked, watching my face. "It's gorgeous. Whose is it?" "Ours, if you want it. I bought it 5 years ago, intending to renovate and sell, but never got around to listing it. 4 bedrooms, original details preserved, garden in back. A real home rather than a fortress." I understood what he was offering. Not just a house, but normalcy. A space that felt like actual life instead of protective isolation. "I want it," I said simply. We moved in 2 weeks later. Joseph helped coordinate, joking that he'd become a professional mover, given how many times he'd relocated my belongings. The brownstone had character that the sleek penthouse lacked: exposed brick and original hardwood floors, tall windows that let in natural light, a kitchen built for actual cooking rather than just reheating takeout. Alexander converted the 3rd bedroom into a studio for me, installing professional lighting and storage for art supplies I hadn't touched in years. Coming home to find it complete, canvases stacked and waiting, easels positioned to catch the afternoon sun, I'd cried from the sheer thoughtfulness of it. "You mentioned painting once, months ago," he said, pulling me against his chest. I remembered. We established routines that felt remarkably domestic. Morning coffee together while reviewing the day's schedules. Him leaving for the office while I worked from the home office or attended meetings around the city. Dinners where we'd discuss everything from shipping contracts to whether we preferred Italian or Thai food. Evenings reading in comfortable silence, his hand absently stroking my ankle while I stretched across the couch with a novel. Joseph became a genuine friend, rather than just Alexander's second-in-command. He'd stop by for Sunday dinners, bringing wine and stories about his latest dating disasters. Watching him and Alexander together, I understood their relationship went deeper than business. They were brothers in everything but blood, bonded by decades of shared history and absolute trust. "You're good for him," Joseph told me one evening while Alexander was taking a phone call. "I've known Alex since we were kids, and I've never seen him this happy. Even before Sophia died, there was always this weight he carried. With you, he actually laughs. He plans for futures beyond next quarter's revenue." One afternoon in March, I finally worked up the courage to call Amanda. We hadn't spoken since before the threats began, and I owed her explanation, even if I couldn't provide complete honesty. "Gabriella?" Her voice was wary when she answered. "I was starting to think you disappeared off the planet. I'm sorry. Things got complicated with work, and I needed to focus." "Complicated how?" "You just vanished. No calls, no texts, nothing for months." She paused. "Does this have to do with your boss? The one you always got weird about when I asked questions?" I took a breath. "Yes. Alexander and I are together now. Actually together, not just professionally, and his world is complex in ways I can't fully explain. But I'm safe, and I'm happy, Amanda. I need you to believe that." Silence stretched across the line. Then, "Are you in trouble? Do you need help getting out of something?" "No. I know how this sounds. But I'm choosing this life. Choosing him. It's not conventional, and it's not what either of us planned when we were in college dreaming about normal futures. But it's real, and I love him." More silence. Finally, Amanda sighed. "You sound different. More sure of yourself somehow. If you're truly happy and not being coerced or manipulated, then I'm happy for you. But I need to see you. Actual face-to-face confirmation that you're okay." We met for lunch the following week at a coffee in Greenwich Village. Amanda took one look at me, and her expression softened. Whatever she saw in my face, my body language, my demeanor, it convinced her more than words could have. "Okay," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I don't understand your life, and I'm not sure I want to, but you look genuinely happy. That's what matters." Beyond personal relationships, I found purpose in unexpected places. The educational programs Alexander's organization funded through various front companies were underfunded and poorly managed. I dove into restructuring them, creating scholarship opportunities for underprivileged students, partnering with legitimate universities, and building something meaningful from resources that had previously been little more than tax write-offs. "You're turning blood money into actual good," Alexander observed one evening, reviewing my proposals for expansion. "Most people couldn't reconcile that moral complexity. You just accept it and move forward. The money exists whether I use it well or not. Students getting educations they couldn't otherwise afford don't care about the source of funding. They care about opportunity." I met his eyes directly. "I can't change your world, Alexander, but I can make sure some good comes from it." He pulled me into his lap, his expression proud and tender. "This is exactly what I mean when I say you've changed everything. Before you, I never considered that power could be used for anything beyond maintaining more power. You're showing me there's another way." "Are you actually considering going legitimate?" "Gradually. Not abandoning everything overnight, but shifting focus. The shipping operations can be completely legal with minor restructuring, some of the real estate holdings, even the restaurants and import businesses. It'll take years, maybe decades, but eventually the Pellegrini name could mean something other than organized crime." The hope in his voice made my chest tight. "You'd do that for me?" "I'd do it for us. For the future we're building. For children we might have someday who deserve better than inheriting violence and moral compromise." He kissed me softly. "You've given me reason to want that future, Gabriella. That's a gift I can never repay." On a warm evening in early May, Alexander came home with an unusual expression. Nervous, which I'd never seen from him. He insisted on cooking dinner himself, which mostly involved him ordering prepared meals from our favorite Italian restaurant and pretending he'd made them. I played along, amused and curious. After dinner, he led me to the living room where he'd lit candles and arranged flowers. Simple white roses that filled the space with delicate fragrance. "What's all this?" I asked, my heart beginning to race. "Gabriella Mitchell." He took both my hands in his dark eyes holding mine with devastating intensity. 10 months ago, you walked into my life and changed everything. You brought light to darkness I'd been living in for years. You showed me that power without purpose is meaningless, that love is worth more than territory or respect or any of the things I spent my life pursuing. He released one of my hands to reach into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. My breath caught. "You've seen the worst parts of me. The violence, the moral compromise, the darkness that comes with this world. And you chose to stay anyway. Not because you were trapped or scared, but because you saw something in me worth loving despite all the reasons you shouldn't." He opened the box, revealing an antique ring with a center diamond surrounded by smaller stones in an intricate setting. This belonged to my grandmother. She wore it for 60 years of marriage to a difficult man in a dangerous world. She was the strongest woman I knew until I met you. Tears were streaming down my face now. He took the ring from the box and held it ready. "Marry me, Gabriella. Make this official. Build this life with me permanently, knowing exactly what you're committing to. Give me the honor of being your husband and spending the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. Yes, absolutely. Yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly, because of course he'd somehow determined my size without me noticing. Then he pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could feel his heart racing against my chest. "I love you," he murmured against my hair, "more than I thought possible. More than is probably wise. You're my entire world. I love you too. Everything about you. Even the complicated parts. Especially the complicated parts because they made you who you are." We stayed like that for long moments, wrapped in each other and the weight of commitment we'd just made. Eventually, Alexander pulled back and gestured to the empty living room floor. "Dance with me? There's no music, so we'll make our own." He pulled me close, one hand on my waist and the other holding mine, and we swayed to silence and heartbeats, and the sound of the city filtering through the windows. No jealousy this time. No interruptions from capos or business emergencies. Just two people who'd found each other despite impossible circumstances, choosing to build something lasting from passion and partnership and profound understanding. I thought about that first night at the party, when Alexander had exploded with jealousy watching me dance with Joseph. How far we'd traveled from that moment of possessive anger to this moment of secure commitment. The journey had been violent and terrifying and beautiful all at once. "What are you thinking?" Alexander asked, reading my expression the way he always could, that I'd do it all again. Every dangerous moment, every terrifying choice, because it led here, to you, to us, even knowing what you know now about my world, especially knowing what I know. No illusions, no pretense. Just truth and choice and love that's strong enough to survive anything. He kissed me then, slow and deep and full of promise, and dancing there in our living room with my engagement ring catching candlelight. I understood that happily ever after didn't mean perfect. It meant choosing each other every day, despite complexity and danger and all the reasons love shouldn't work. We'd built something real from impossible circumstances, a partnership forged in crisis and strengthened by absolute honesty. And whatever came next, whatever challenges the future held, we'd face them together. Not as boss and assistant, not as protector and protected, but as equals who'd seen each other at our worst and chosen love anyway. The music we danced to existed only between us, but it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. The end.